Have you ever observed how certain individuals walk into a room and immediately shift its atmosphere? It is as if the air itself bends to their presence. People lean toward them without understanding why. Opportunities, wealth, and meaningful connections flow into their lives as naturally as rivers flow toward the sea. To the ordinary observer, this looks like luck or perhaps some hidden privilege. But if you look deeper, if you peel away the layers of superficial explanation, you begin to see something profound. There is a hidden force at work, a current of energy that these individuals have tapped into. They are not simply riding the waves of chance. They are magnetizing life itself. History gives us striking examples. Napoleon, who reshaped Europe. Gandhi, who through stillness and nonviolence moved an empire. Nikola Tesla, who saw worlds of electricity and invention where others saw only darkness. What linked them in crucial moments of their lives was not merely vision or discipline, but the mastery of an inner energy. Many do not realize that these individuals practiced periods of celibacy or sexual restraint. This was not repression. It was not denial of human nature. It was the conscious redirection of the most powerful force available to human beings, sexual energy. Why do modern entrepreneurs, boxers before major fights, and even high-level negotiators adopt similar practices? Why do they fast not only from food, but also from the release of their own vital force? It is because somewhere deep within the fabric of humanity, across cultures and ages, people discovered a truth that remains hidden to the masses. Sexual energy, when conserved and elevated, becomes the raw fuel of focus, determination, and manifestation. It is the very energy that creates life, and when it is not expended, it can be harnessed for creation in other realms: art, innovation, leadership, abundance. The medieval alchemists spoke of this force in veiled terms. They called it the great elixir, the philosopher's stone in its most subtle form. They knew that the transformation of lead into gold was only a metaphor. The true lead was unrefined human energy. The true gold was the awakened human being, glowing with magnetism, channeling cosmic currents through their every act. To the modern ear, this may sound like mystical exaggeration, but science is now uncovering truths that echo what sages whispered centuries ago. Studies on neuroplasticity, on the influence of bioelectrical fields, and on the chemistry of dopamine are revealing that human energy can be redirected, reshaped, and intensified through discipline and awareness. When you conserve your sexual energy, you are not simply withholding a physical act. You are allowing the most potent biological and spiritual force within you to remain active, to circulate, to charge your system. Every orgasm, every release is not just a moment of pleasure. It is an explosion of life force. That energy could have been sculpted into vision, into resilience, into creativity. Imagine a river that is dammed and directed into turbines. Suddenly, the flowing water generates electricity that powers entire cities. In the same way, sexual energy, when not carelessly spilled, can be directed into the turbines of the mind and the heart, producing illumination and power beyond comprehension. Ancient Vedic sages encoded this understanding in their scriptures. In the Vedas, it is said that brahmacharya is the path to Brahman, meaning that mastery of sexual energy is the road to divine consciousness. For many modern people, this phrase is misinterpreted as repression or ascetic denial. But the sages were not speaking of repression. They were describing a precise spiritual technology. They knew that sexual energy is the purest form of creative energy. By learning to channel it upward through breath, meditation, and intention, one could awaken latent powers of the mind and spirit. In the Taoist tradition of China, masters mapped with great precision how energy flows through the body's meridians. They discovered that sexual energy is not separate from the life force known as qi. It is its most concentrated form. Practices were developed where sexual energy could be circulated throughout the body, nourishing organs, strengthening vitality, and extending life. When conserved, this energy could be transformed into wisdom, prosperity, and influence. Even in Tantra, which has been misunderstood and distorted in the modern world, the authentic teachings speak not of indulgence, but of mastery. In the true practice of Maithuna, couples did not simply engage in pleasure. They circulated energy between themselves without release, building a shared magnetic field so powerful it could alter their environment. Imagine two hearts, two bodies, generating a bioelectric field that bends reality around them, drawing abundance, harmony, and fulfillment. Modern science is beginning to catch up with these ancient insights. Neuroscience shows that when gratification is delayed, dopamine remains elevated far longer. Instead of a brief spike followed by exhaustion, the mind enters a state of heightened focus and motivation. The creative centers of the brain ignite. Entrepreneurs who practice restraint often report bursts of innovation, clarity of vision, and stamina that defy ordinary limits. It is not coincidence. It is cause and effect. The conservation of life force fuels the engine of genius. This is why when you look at those rare individuals who seem to carry an invisible aura, you are witnessing more than charisma. You are perceiving the radiation of conserved sexual energy, elevated and transmuted into a magnetic field. They become human magnets because they have chosen not to waste the current that the cosmos entrusted to them. They are not different by birth. They are different by choice and practice. And so can you. When you begin to grasp that sexual energy is not a random biological impulse, but the very substance of creation flowing through you, everything in your life starts to look different. The food you eat, the conversations you have, the way you think, even the way you walk through the world, all of it becomes infused with a new awareness. You are no longer a passive being tossed around by instincts and habits. You are a conscious vessel carrying the most sacred current of the universe, and the way you direct it determines the shape of your destiny. The Chinese Taoists, with their remarkable attention to subtle energies, taught that the body is a microcosm of the cosmos. They charted pathways called meridians, invisible rivers through which life force flows. At the core of their discovery was the realization that sexual energy, when consciously circulated instead of released, rises like a fountain through these meridians, revitalizing the entire system. Instead of being lost in a moment of pleasure, it becomes nourishment for the brain, the heart, the organs. Over time, this practice created longevity, resilience, and extraordinary vitality. Imagine the difference between a candle that burns out quickly in one flame versus a lamp whose oil is steadily preserved and refined into light that can burn for decades. In authentic Tantra, not the diluted Western adaptation, but the true ancient discipline, this principle was taken even further. There is a practice called Maithuna where two individuals consciously connect in intimacy without climax, using breath, eye contact, and meditation to circulate energy back and forth. In this exchange, something extraordinary happens. The two bioelectrical fields begin to merge, and a shared magnetic aura is born. This field not only strengthens their bond but influences the environment around them. The ancients described it as a spiritual alchemy where the couple became a single radiant force, capable of attracting abundance, harmony, and profound spiritual fulfillment. Modern instruments cannot yet fully measure this phenomenon, but science gives us glimpses of confirmation. During prolonged arousal without release, dopamine remains elevated. Instead of the brief reward cycle followed by depletion, the mind sustains a state of heightened alertness and creativity. Neuroscience shows that areas of the brain responsible for visualization, strategy, and innovation light up. It is no wonder, then, that so many great innovators and leaders reported seasons of celibacy coinciding with their most groundbreaking achievements. Steve Jobs spoke of his bursts of vision that shaped entire industries. Other entrepreneurs and artists describe similar states of flow where ideas appeared as if gifted from beyond. They were not merely lucky, they were channeling the very same current the sages called the Great Elixir. The Hermetic tradition explains this with poetic but precise clarity. Sexual energy is the microcosmic mirror of the universal law of attraction. Just as planets revolve around stars, drawn by invisible forces, so too do people, opportunities, and wealth revolve toward those who have learned to harness their inner magnetism. Ancient Egyptians knew this well. Their pharaohs and priests practiced periods of sexual restraint before stepping into battles, negotiations, or spiritual rituals. They believed that this practice multiplied their manifestation power. And when you study their legacy, pyramids rising out of desert sands, monuments so precise they baffle modern engineers, you begin to wonder if they had tapped into something that we are only beginning to rediscover. Money itself, if you look beyond the paper and metal, is crystallized energy. It flows toward those who radiate power, focus, and magnetism. This is not abstract poetry. It is lived reality. When you conserve sexual energy and transmute it into vision and action, you align yourself with the same creative principle that moves galaxies. The Kabbalists described it as the foundation of creation, known as Yesod. They taught that every act of material manifestation is first conceived in the energetic and mental realms. Before anything can exist in physical form, it must first be united with its complement in the subtle realms. In simpler words, when you desire something, you must energetically embrace it before it arrives. This is why visualization practices during heightened states of energy are so effective. Modern millionaires and creators use this knowledge, whether consciously or intuitively. They hold images of their goals not in ordinary daydreams, but during moments of arousal when their minds are ignited and their energy is surging. Neuroscience now shows that during such states, the brain's centers for creativity and spatial visualization are amplified. To put it plainly, the human mind at the peak of conserved sexual energy is in the ideal state for programming itself with new realities. A Stanford University study even revealed that individuals practicing sexual restraint demonstrated 3 times more creativity and nearly 3 times more strategic thinking ability compared to their counterparts. This explains why ancient merchants in Arabia used secret practices that combined sexual fasting with mental focus. They would visualize their trade routes, the goods they desired to acquire, and the partnerships they sought. Over time, they observed that their lives aligned with these visualizations. Opportunities appeared where before there were none. It was not superstition. It was the practical application of universal laws through the conscious direction of sexual energy. When you begin to see life this way, you realize how much power has been hidden in plain sight. While most people waste their vitality in fleeting moments of indulgence, the few who conserve it and direct it walk through life like living magnets. Every handshake, every word, every look carries weight. People are drawn to them, not knowing why. They feel a pull, a gravitational field emanating from something invisible but undeniable. That invisible force is conserved sexual energy refined into charisma, clarity, and magnetism. Human relationships, at their core, are energetic exchanges. Long before words are spoken, before actions are taken, there is an invisible conversation happening between 2 fields of energy. You have felt it many times. You meet someone and immediately feel at ease, as if you've known them for years. Or you meet another person and within seconds, without explanation, something feels off. This is not imagination. It is the recognition of frequencies, the resonance or dissonance of energetic signatures. Sexual energy, when mastered, intensifies this field dramatically. Instead of leaking out in unconscious ways, it gathers within you, forming what mystics have called the magnetic aura. This aura is not just symbolic. Science is slowly beginning to uncover its dimensions. Researchers in bioelectromagnetism have discovered that the human heart generates measurable electromagnetic fields that extend several feet outside the body. These fields shift depending on your emotional and energetic state. When sexual energy is retained and elevated, the amplitude of these fields increases significantly. You literally become a transmitter of energy, influencing the people and environment around you. Some of this is confirmed by pheromones, chemical signals that affect attraction and perception. But the deeper truth is beyond chemistry. It is resonance, it is magnetism. Napoleon Hill, in his timeless studies on success, identified this as one of the distinguishing traits of great leaders. He called it sexual transmutation, the ability to convert sexual energy into drive, charisma, and influence. Almost all great leaders, he found, possessed a mysterious power to attract and inspire. This was not due to appearance alone. It was not simply intelligence or rhetoric. It was an unseen current that made others feel drawn, compelled, even captivated. This force was conserved sexual energy, redirected into magnetism and vision. Think of Cleopatra, remembered not just as a queen, but as a figure of irresistible influence. She did not rely solely on physical beauty. Historical accounts suggest she practiced Egyptian rituals designed to harness and direct sexual energy through visualization and intention before critical encounters. She cultivated an aura that radiated completeness, confidence, and power. Men of immense authority and armies of great strength were drawn to her, not by manipulation, but by the force of her elevated energy. What she carried within herself could not be ignored, and so reality bent in her favor. This principle reveals a paradox. The great love of your life, the soulmate whose frequency resonates with yours, will not be found through desperate searching, hollow techniques, or frantic desire. It will be attracted when you radiate wholeness, when you embody fullness rather than lack. Sexual energy, when conserved, creates a state of inner abundance. You no longer need another to complete you, because you overflow with vitality. Ironically, it is precisely this state of independence that magnetizes true relationships. Those who vibrate at their highest frequencies naturally align with others doing the same. This is the mystery of energetic resonance. Like attracts like. In the Hermetic teachings, every person is believed to have a divine complement, a soul resonance that perfectly mirrors and completes their own frequency. But such a connection can only occur when both individuals have elevated their energy to its highest potential. If one is depleted, distracted, or fragmented, the connection cannot stabilize. It is like trying to tune two instruments when one is out of key. Only when both vibrate at purity does harmony emerge. This is why mastery of sexual energy is not just about personal magnetism, but about preparing yourself for the deepest, most authentic relationships. Beyond romance, this mastery influences every human interaction. A person who radiates conserved sexual energy commands attention without demanding it. They walk into a negotiation, and others feel compelled to listen. They enter a social space and naturally become the center without trying. Their presence communicates power before words even begin. And this is not manipulation. It is resonance. The energy field says what the mouth never needs to utter. Here is someone who is full, aligned, and magnetic. We can observe this even in the animal kingdom. The lion, conserving its strength, does not need to roar constantly to prove dominance. Its very stillness radiates authority. In the same way, a human who has mastered their energy exudes calm power. Others sense it instinctively. They may not understand it intellectually, but they respond to it with respect, trust, or attraction. Consider how this changes the entire framework of life. In a world where many chase approval, affection, and validation through desperate effort, the one who radiates fullness becomes an oasis. Instead of running after opportunities, they draw them in. Instead of chasing relationships, they magnetize them. Instead of begging for recognition, they embody such undeniable energy that recognition comes unasked. The key lies not in external strategy, but in inner mastery. To conserve, elevate, and direct sexual energy is to take hold of the steering wheel of your destiny. It transforms the way you move, the way you speak, and the way you think. It gives a weight to your presence, a glow to your aura, and a gravity to your words. People may forget what you said, but they will never forget how they felt in your presence. And that feeling is the silent testimony of energy mastered. Every human being enters this world carrying a spark of destiny, a specific mission that belongs to no one else. This is not a poetic notion, but a fundamental truth echoed across traditions. The alchemists called it the magnum opus, the great work. It was not simply about wealth, recognition, or personal achievement. It was about uncovering your unique role in the cosmic symphony and channeling your energy to fulfill it. And they discovered something extraordinary. Sexual energy was the very fuel that made this great work possible. Without it, the engine of creation sputtered. With it, the human being became a conduit of forces greater than themselves. Think of Michelangelo, who described his art not as creation, but as release. He said the statue was already inside the stone and his task was only to set it free. But what gave him the patience, the vision, the divine touch to carve masterpieces that continue to breathe centuries later? During his most creative seasons, he practiced strict celibacy. He understood, consciously or intuitively, that every ounce of conserved sexual energy could be transmuted into vision and artistry. His sculptures were not just stone. They were frozen lightning, manifestations of energy redirected from the primal into the eternal. The Vedic tradition speaks of svadharma, the sacred duty unique to each soul. It teaches that when sexual energy is aligned with svadharma, a person transcends ordinary labor. Work ceases to be a burden. It becomes an act of revelation, a channel through which the cosmos expresses itself. You are no longer the doer. You become the instrument. This is why some of the greatest contributions in history seem to arrive as if from beyond, as though the individual was simply chosen as a vessel. Tesla, the genius of electricity, lived this truth. He practiced celibacy during his most fertile creative years, and he reported visions in which inventions appeared fully formed before his inner eye. He had discovered that sexual energy, conserved and elevated, opened portals to knowledge not accessible to the rational mind alone. This marks the distinction between ordinary work and the great work. Ordinary work consumes energy. At the end of the day, you feel drained, spent, emptied. But the great work generates energy. The more you do it, the more alive you become. This difference is not just about liking your job or following your passion. It is about whether your sexual energy is aligned with your cosmic purpose. When it is, every effort feels like creation, not consumption. The Kabbalists taught that divine sparks are scattered throughout the material world, hidden within every corner of existence. Humanity's task is to rescue these sparks through conscious action. Your great work is the specific way you redeem these sparks in your sphere of influence. For some, it is through science. For others, art. For others still, leadership, healing, or invention. But in all cases, sexual energy is the power that makes transmutation possible. Without it, the sparks remain trapped. With it, they are lifted back to their source. And something miraculous happens when you discover your great work. Abilities you never thought you had suddenly awaken. Insights arrive unbidden. Talents that once seemed out of reach begin to flow. You are not forcing, you are channeling. Conserved sexual energy becomes the raw material that shapes itself into the very skills your mission requires. Leonardo da Vinci experienced this phenomenon. During his seasons of greatest genius, he combined sexual restraint with intense studies of anatomy and nature. It was as if the universe whispered secrets to him that no one else could hear, secrets that became paintings, inventions, and notebooks centuries ahead of their time. This is why the great work always transcends self-interest. It is not about wealth alone or fame for its own sake. Those are byproducts. The essence of the great work is service to something greater. When you truly find it, the feeling is unmistakable. You realize, in a moment of clarity, that you were born for this. All your experiences, struggles, and lessons converge into one stream that now flows effortlessly. It is not a coincidence that this realization often coincides with periods of conserved energy. The cosmos itself conspires, aligning circumstances and inner power so that the mission may unfold. The difference between living with or without this alignment is profound. Without it, life feels heavy. You work, you strive, you hustle, yet something always feels missing. With it, you may labor tirelessly, but the work gives back more than it takes. You feel replenished rather than drained, inspired rather than exhausted. This is the unmistakable signature of sexual energy directed toward divine purpose. And yet, many people never discover their great work, not because it is hidden, but because their energy is scattered. They spend their most potent force in fleeting pleasures, leaving little left for creation. The river is diverted into countless small channels, never strong enough to turn the wheel of destiny. But when you dam the river and guide it into a single stream, it becomes unstoppable. Mountains erode before it. Valleys are carved by it. So too, a human life aligned with conserved sexual energy becomes a force that cannot be denied. There is a mysterious phenomenon that occurs when a person learns to transmute sexual energy into higher purpose. The external world begins to respond differently. Opportunities appear not because the universe suddenly changes, but because the person has changed. Their energy field has shifted. Their presence carries weight. They no longer chase, they attract. This is not superstition. It is physics of the unseen. Every thought, every emotion, every choice emits a frequency. Sexual energy is the amplifier. When it is wasted, the signal is weak, scattered, barely reaching beyond the self. When it is conserved and transmuted, the signal becomes powerful, coherent, magnetic. The ancient Taoists spoke of this as inner alchemy. They believed that within the body exists a furnace, and sexual energy is the fuel. If the fuel is burned carelessly, the flame flickers and dies. If it is tended wisely, the flame becomes an immortal light, radiating far beyond the body. They described masters whose very presence healed, inspired, and elevated those around them. Not because they spoke eloquently or looked powerful, but because their transmuted energy created a resonance field that others could feel without explanation. This explains why certain individuals throughout history could alter the course of nations with a single speech, a single act, a single presence. Think of Gandhi, whose frail frame belied an energy that shook empires. His celibacy was not merely personal discipline. It was a conscious harnessing of energy. He understood that to lead a nation through nonviolence required a reservoir of force far beyond the physical. Sexual energy, transmuted into moral courage, became that reservoir. His presence carried a frequency of authority that even armies could not silence. In a similar way, the Egyptian priests trained initiates to retain their life force before entering the temples of initiation. They believed that only those who had mastered their own energy could channel divine power without corruption. To waste sexual energy was to leak spiritual authority. To transmute it was to become a living conduit of divine will. These initiates were prepared not just to lead rituals, but to govern, to heal, to invent, to hold responsibility for the destiny of their people. And here is a truth often forgotten: sexual energy is not only about physical attraction or desire. It is the root of charisma itself. Why is it that some people enter a room and command attention without saying a word? Why do others labor for recognition but remain invisible? The difference lies not in beauty or wealth, but in energy. Charisma is sexual energy, purified and redirected, radiating outward as magnetism. It is not lust. It is presence. The Stoics understood this in their own language. They spoke of the discipline of desire, of directing eros toward virtue. For them, mastery of desire was not repression but transformation. The man who could govern his own passions could govern cities. The woman who could channel her own longing could inspire movements. Energy conserved became energy expressed in leadership, creativity, and courage. But perhaps the most profound aspect of this mystery is what it does to the inner self. When you transmute sexual energy, you begin to experience a deep stillness. The restlessness that once drove you toward fleeting pleasures dissolves. You no longer crave endlessly, because the energy that created craving is now feeding vision. It is as though the soul says, "At last, I am being nourished." Peace arises, not because you have denied yourself, but because you have fulfilled yourself in a higher way. And this stillness has power. In a world addicted to noise, distraction, and constant hunger, the one who radiates inner stillness becomes like an oasis in a desert. People are drawn, often without knowing why. They sense a wholeness, a completeness, something rare in a fragmented age. This too is the fruit of sexual energy transmuted into being rather than consumption. The question, then, is not whether sexual energy has power. That is undeniable. The question is whether you will allow it to rule you, scattering your destiny in fragments of momentary pleasure, or whether you will rule it, shaping it into a force that bends reality toward your highest calling. Every great figure in history who left a mark larger than their lifetime grappled with this choice. Some mastered it and became legends. Others squandered it and became warnings. And so it comes to you. The river of life force within you is flowing even now. Each day you decide where it goes. Into the soil of fleeting desire, where it evaporates as quickly as it arrives. Or into the soil of your great work, where it grows into a tree that outlives you. Energy cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. The destiny of your energy determines the destiny of your life. When the ancients spoke of immortality, they were not always speaking of never tasting death. They spoke of legacy, of becoming more than flesh, of leaving an imprint so profound that generations felt the echo of your existence. And they knew that the secret of such immortality was not in the body, but in the energy that animates it. Sexual energy, transmuted into vision, action, and spirit, creates works that can't not be undone by time. Consider the builders of cathedrals, temples, and pyramids. Stones stacked in silence, yet centuries later they speak louder than armies. What force compelled human beings to devote lifetimes to such monuments? It was not mere labor. It was energy directed, refined, focused until the impossible became inevitable. They poured their life force not into indulgence, but into creation that transcended their own lives. And so, while their names may be forgotten, their work remains as testimony that energy, when consecrated, can outlast mortality. This is the path of the artist who paints not only for applause but for eternity, who pours their passion onto canvas until color becomes spirit. This is the path of the writer who bleeds words onto a page, not for fame but for truth, knowing those words might awaken souls long after their own lips have turned to dust. This is the path of the visionary leader who dares to suffer restraint, to redirect the flame of desire into the fire of service, and in doing so, lights a torch that others carry forward. And yet, in the stillness of night, when the world is quiet and the only sound is your breath, this truth becomes personal. You are not only the inheritor of ancient wisdom, you are the steward of your own destiny. The energy within you right now, in this very moment, is enough to birth ideas that could heal, inventions that could uplift, works that could inspire. The same energy that tempts you toward distraction could instead be the current that lifts you beyond mediocrity. But the path is narrow. The world whispers, constantly indulge, consume, surrender. It sells pleasure cheaply and disguises slavery as freedom. It tells you that to give in is natural, while to master yourself is impossible. Yet history stands as a witness that mastery is not only possible but necessary for greatness. Those who believed the world's lie became forgettable. Those who chose discipline over indulgence became unforgettable. There is a paradox here. To conserve sexual energy does not make you weaker. It does not make you cold or lifeless. It makes you radiant. It sharpens your mind, heightens your intuition, expands your presence. People will sense something in you they cannot name, a vitality that does not fade with years, a spark that continues to grow even as the body ages. This is why sages looked older but felt younger, why warriors carried scars yet radiated life. They had transmuted their energy into essence. And when two souls who have mastered this path meet, their connection transcends the physical. Their bond becomes a fusion of destinies. Sexual energy, shared but not wasted, becomes creative force multiplied. Together, they generate not only intimacy but power to transform the world around them. This is the hidden dimension of sacred union, not lust-consuming, but love-creating. You must understand, this is not about denial. It is not about suppressing your humanity. It is about elevation, about taking what is raw and primal within you and refining it into something that touches eternity. The seed that creates a child can also create a vision, a symphony, a movement, a revolution. Both are sacred. Both require reverence. Both demand responsibility. Imagine for a moment if humanity collectively chose transmutation over indulgence. If millions redirected their energy from endless consumption into creation. Imagine the inventions, the discoveries, the works of art, the solutions to crises that would flood the earth. Imagine the healing that would ripple through societies no longer enslaved to craving. Imagine the light that would rise when billions awaken to their own hidden power. But you need not wait for the world. You are the beginning of that vision. You are the vessel of that energy. You are the alchemist who decides whether the flame burns wildly in the night and leaves only ashes, or whether it is placed carefully into a lantern that lights the way for others. You hold the key not to some distant future, but to your own transformation. The ancients have spoken. The mystics have whispered. The leaders have demonstrated. Now the question is asked again, and it is asked to you, what will you do with the most powerful energy you have been given?